Hi and welcome to Eldar Army. This is the first troops video and we're going to talk about Guardian Defenders. This is 7th edition Codex review and we're going to be going through what we believe are the good highlights and the weaknesses of this unit. But before we go into any detail, we're actually going to start back a little bit and we're going to talk about the history of the model. The original Eldar army in Rogue Trader was based around these guys. This is a model from when I was about 15 years old, and this is just called Eldar. He was originally part of the idea how they were envisaged as a pirate marauding band wearing mesh armour with shuriken catapults. I mean, it was quite clear that they were quite close to the elves of sort of fantasy, you know, even with catapults instead of bows. And there wasn't too much detail in their fluff. However, in 1990, in White Dwarf 142, Jez Goodwin completely reimagined Eldar in what I think is probably the largest change in 40k lore that has stuck the longest. It wasn't even a retcon, it was just a reimagining of Eldar, and it wasn't as a reinterpretation of fantasy, it was in its own distinct theme. And it's from that time that you get the aspect warriors, you get the long life, you get the path of the Eldar and Eldar living sort of multiple sort of careers. You also get the fact that they're a declining race, and you get the fall of the Eldar, and it's all very fantastic. And actually, it's that attracted me to Eldar originally when I was a teenager. That came out when I was about 15 years old, and it's still stuck with me even now, and I'm 40. So Jez Goodwin was an absolute genius back then. About a year later, the 2nd edition came out. And with the advent of 2nd edition, Guardians got actually put in the game. So you've got to remember that, well, sorry, in 1990 Guardians got put in the game. And I think the reason why they were envisaged was actually a way of utilising the troops that you might have already accumulated as an Eldar player. So you're expected to go out and buy new Dire Avengers, new Fire Dragons and new Striking Scorpions. But you may already have the old Pirate Eldar, so a way of using those models was to include them as Guardians. At least that's my interpretation. However, in about 1992, these guys appeared. They are metal-bodied. Forgive the way that they're put together, but that's just me. And you might notice that they've got a lasgun. Back in 2nd edition, Guardians came with lasguns, and they needed a 3-point upgrade to have a shuriken catapult. I've got one here as well. He's slightly different. He's got a power fist. They were much more close to what you would I'm sorry, it's not quite focused. Hang on. They were much more close to what you would sort of expect to see with Marines. You could kit them out with quite a lot of flexibility. And then in about 1994, this chap here was released in a plastic kit. So now he was plastic body and plastic gun. And then if you sort of scoop forward a little bit into about 2002, the Eldar kits that you kind of recognise as Eldar kits for Guardians now appear. This is what these guys are made from. They're not push to fit Eldar models. They are from a kit with quite a large number of components on the sprue, and they take quite a lot of work to make. There was also made these chaps here, which I'll show you in the camera, and these are push to fit Eldar Guardians, which you can get in the pack of 4. I would recommend avoiding these as a pack of 4, and I would say buy the pack of 10. With the pack of 10 you get 8 of this style, which is a slightly older model but probably a higher quality model. The push to fit is very easy to assemble, and the pack of 4 that you can buy relatively cheaply is good, but they don't work with these, which are the Storm Guardian sprues. So if you ever want to convert to Storm Guardians, you're going to need the 2002 models, not the 2010 push to click models. I'm a little bit unsure of the dates on that, but I think that's broadly right when they came out. So enough of the history of the model, and let's go on to what the pros and cons of this unit in the game. Guardian Defenders are much maligned. They are well known as probably one of the weakest units in 40k. But there are 3 really good reasons that I think you should consider taking Guardian Defenders. They are cheap, they're cheap, and they are cheap. They have a quality of their own because of the quantity that you can take them in. There's quite a lot of people who will pretty much ignore Guardians as well on the table because they see them as not enough of a threat to really deal with. And we'll talk about the threat level they can bring later on in the review. But one of the big pros about them is that they are cheap. You get a lot for your points. They're very easy to kill, but they also kill things very easily. They have a strength 4 weapon with a pseudo ending. They come with a very, very high base stat line, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4, initiative 5, which is excellent. You know, the same as a Space Marine, if not better. I would say as a racial minimum, they're a phenomenal stat line. Humans are probably, you know, conscripts like weapon skill 2, ballistic skill 2, Tau, obviously they're firecast, the ones that you're dealing with. But if you think of the air cast and the earth cast, they're going to be like weapon skill pretty low. Necrons, they're not quite really the same because they don't really have a minimum because of how they're sort of synthetic really. And the same with Tyranids, you know, but even their first sort of gaunts, they're not that good. Even, you know, stat line, they're equivalent, you know, they're probably not as good as an Eldar Guardian. And so you're talking about Orcs, which I actually think is probably the only competitor for a base racial stat line as good as weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4. Remember, these guys are citizen, soldier, militia. They're your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker. They're not seasoned professionals, yet they come out of the box with a phenomenal stat line. It's very easy to forget and take for granted because of things like Space Marines, just how high ballistic skill 4, weapon skill 4 is. But basically, they are awesome troops for the points. And the second thing I would say about that is that because they're cheap, they're actually the most expensive, and this is going into one of the cons. They're actually one of the most expensive troops choice base squad. The base squad for a Guardian Defender is 10 men at 90 points. Now, Storm Guardians can take 8, Wind Riders can take 3, and Rangers and Dire Avengers can take 5. So even though they're all more expensive, with the exception of Storm Guardians, you can see that the minimum squad is actually the most expensive. But what do you get for that minimum squad? You get 10 men who've got weapon skill and ballistic skill 4 and carry a strength 4 weapon with 2 shots at 12-inch range. And you think, well, okay. But you also get a soldier that's got toughness 3 and basically no armour. He has the worst armour you can pretty much take in 40k, and everything kills him, usually on 3s. And he will die in droves. If you allow someone to shoot at your Guardian Defenders, there will not be any Guardian Defenders left. But does that mean they're any use to you? Actually, I think they have a place on the battlefield, and I'm going to go through that. Now, one of the reasons why they're not on auto take is basically scat bikes. It's not that Guardian Defenders are bad, it's just that scat bikes are so overwhelmingly good. But I want to talk about it from a point of view of a player who has been playing Eldar for some time. I actually have 50 here in a box. I won't show it to you because they'll fall out, but I got 50 of these guys, and if you're anything like me, you're going to have a load of these guys floating around, and that's really important to bear in mind. It's not 40k is not just a hobby of going out and accumulating figures for me. It's also a hobby about utilising what you've got to the best of your ability, and that's what this review is for. If you've got Eldar Guardians in your room and you want to use them, you want to put them into your battle, this is going to help you how to do that. And so people often say about Guardian Defenders that they're good for holding battleline objectives. Actually, they're not. They're quite clearly not going to be good at that. They have no ability to absorb punishment whatsoever. They also have an incredibly low leadership. So they're going to run and they're going to get killed by pretty much anything. And Dire Avengers, their sort of equivalent aspect, actually have got a lot more hardiness to them. For 90 points, you can deck out a Dire Avenger squad with an invulnerable save, with an Exarch who's got 2 wounds, and they've got a much higher leadership, and they've got a 4-up save plus things like in cover, go to ground, suddenly start really working as well with the invuln that they've got. They're quite a lot harder to shift. 6 Dire Avengers, if you like, are harder to shift than the equivalent points cost in Guardian Defenders. So I just don't buy the argument that they're good at holding backline objectives, and also with jet bikes as well, being able to move so fast. I just don't think that's a role that you can really justify. So what can they be used for? Well, there are 2 builds that I've put together. One of them I used in a tournament to great success, and I actually won the tournament. I've used it. We're talking 6, 7 battles, maybe 8 battles now. It's not the only build that I use with Eldar, but one of the pros of this build is that you will not get talked down as some sort of power player if you take this build. You will be able to hold your head up high and win, and if you do win, you'll be able to say it's because I played these units well. There are very few players, in fact I could almost say there are no players in 40k who would think you were overpowered by taking Troops Choice Guardian Defenders. So how can you use them in the current meta of 40k to get any sort of value? You know, when you're talking about Grav, when you're talking about all these formation bonuses, first rank, second rank fire orders, Tau with their insane numbers of, you know, rapid firing shots. So how are you able to justify saying they're any good in that kind of competitive narrative? And the truth is, there is a place for them. And so there are 2 builds. One build that I would recommend completely as viable, and another build which is more of a mob, and I'll go through that. And I wouldn't say it's as viable. I've only tried it once. It wasn't very successful, but it does kind of work, and I'll go through why I believe it works. The build is based around 10 no bone, you know, nothing added, just 10 as they come vanilla Guardian Defenders with, if I can put him in shot, a Wave Serpent. This suddenly becomes a really potent mixture. What you have now is 10 Guardians inside a Wave Serpent. They're going to be protected pretty well, certainly for the first turn, and they should be able to get into shooting range by turn 2. The reason why I say should is if you do opt for a battle focus, a battle host, you'll get a 6-inch battle focus, which means that this unit will be able to leave the rear door of the Wave Serpent, which has made a 6-inch move in turn 2, then move 6 inches, and then move another 6 inches. So that's actually an 18-inch move. Then shoot their guns with 20 shots. Now, unfortunately, 20 shots, even with this unit, is not going to do too much. They could shift 5-man tactical squad out of, you know, a drop pod objective, and they could, and they also have a plasma grenade, which don't forget to use because they actually are quite good. They can throw, one of the chaps can throw 1 plasma grenade. The range is so low at 12 inches that you should remember to try to do that, especially if people are hunkered into some sort of complex bunker. But the truth is, 1 squad on its own is just not going to cut it, even with the Wave Serpent. By the way, I'd recommend that you take the Wave Serpent with shuriken cannons on the top and shuriken cannon underslung. With Eldar, as a general rule, I would say never upgrade Eldar. It's one of the few things that I would say you always do, is you always upgrade the underslung shuriken cannon. The second thing you should always do is always upgrade singing spears on warlocks or farseers, but I'm with jet bikes. But I digress there a little bit. So just to be clear, the main thing you want to be doing with your squad is keeping it cheap. If you manage to get underslung, overslung, shuriken cannon, and 10 men, you're talking 210 points, which is cheap. You can get quite a lot of potency for that. You've got 3 hull points, you've got a jink that will probably get you through to probably turn 3. You might lose 1 or 2 to hits, but you'll be keep on trucking. The next thing you do is you don't just take 1, you take 2, and you're doubling up, okay? And so you're now taking not 1 squad of 10, you're taking 2. Now this is now 420 points. So you're now talking about a serious investment, which is why you might be considering taking the battle host formation, because then you're only taking 1 more squad. If you do go for a battle host formation, you're allowed to take another free upgrade support, you know, like the weapon that they take, platform. I would avoid going for the EML, Eldar Missile Launcher. I know it's 30 points. I know it's very tempting to get a 30-point support weapon for free, but in all honesty, it doesn't synergise with what their role is going to be. What does synergise with their role is actually another shuriken cannon. So now, if you take, you've now taken 4 shuriken cannons 2 if you take a battle host. They can move 12 inches, which I would recommend that you take advantage of and then shoot. And you've got 40 shots with rending, plus another 6, plus 2 bow waves, wave shields from the serpent shield. That's a lot of fire for 420 points. Also, you've got units that can target 4 different things, which is great if you're going to a corner of the board with 2 drop pods and 2 squads of dug-in Marines. When you get a lot of these Gladius strike forces, they tend to come down. The current meta with Marines, at least, is that the pod will come down, usually in a corner of the board, and try and dominate maybe 2 or 3 objectives, maybe even 3 objectives. And they kind of fight a mini battle for the rest of the game because they're pretty locked down to that area. They can't move as much as Eldar, and they're not going to try. They're going to try and fight from where they stand and try to dictate a little bit. But if you're dictating with Eldar Guardians, they are a phenomenal asset to have. There aren't many units you can come in with 420 points and do that much damage to that many targets. Now, yeah, I could take multiple squads of scatterbikes and have the same effect, but they're not going to be as resilient as this. And also, against certain targets, scatterbikes can be quite, they're not a problem to deal with, but you need to be able to 2d6 assault, move back into cover. There might not be cover, and then they're actually just like Marines to kill against, those, I forget what they're called, Hurricane, not what they're called, the ones that fire 20 shots, Gatling guns from Lehman Russes, the ones I mean. There are weapons out there that can really obliterate scatterbikes, I know people take minimum squads, but still, flamers, they don't like flamers. If you have 2, 3, 4 squads, they're physically running out of space quite easily on a flank, and you will quite easily lose a couple of squads, and suddenly you start thinking, oh, here we go. Whereas, I'm not saying that scatterbikes are bad, by the way, I wouldn't go anywhere near that, but there are certain situations where, if you play to your merits, this can be pretty useful against horde armies, for example. So, what have we got here? You've actually got, if you count, if you take the weapons platforms, you take 36 strength 6 shots. Sorry, not 36. 18 strength 6 shots. And 40 strength 4 shots, all with rending, or pseudo-rending, with Bladestorm. Plus 4d6 strength 6 shots that ignore cover. So that's a lot. That's basically 58 shots plus whatever 4d6 is. And they can go in multiple places, up to 4 different directions. It's a lot of DACA, and I call that pump and dump. You drive them up, you can go flat out. I wouldn't recommend going flat out, 12 inches is usually enough. Shoot your wave serpents at something, take a few hits. Now you might think, well, how do you absorb the hits? And here's a trick that I would say, if you're taking the battle host formation, you might want to consider. And there's this chap here. A Viper. Now, in the battle host formation, you're obliged to take a Viper. I would kit him out underslung, overslung, shuriken canon, and I would place him in front of the wave serpents, and I would move him side on at the end of the turn, first turn, so that he's facing like that. If the enemy's coming from that way, what that means is your wave serpents have got a degree of cover, and potentially, if you do it right, and the wave serpents are behind each other like this, you'll actually be able to get a situation where the cover means that they either shoot the Viper, in which case the Viper jinx, or they shoot the wave serpent, in which case you don't have to jinx because you've got a Viper in front of you. Now, it will actually give you a bit of an effect. It'll help you, and people will struggle because they'll go, well, I don't really want to shoot the Viper because it's just tinfoil, but it's a waste of me shooting. But I really want to shoot the wave serpent, but now I've got a cover save whatever I do. And with careful placement, you can achieve it, especially when you've got large objects in the middle of the terrain board, which is good. So this is a build that I would say works with or without the formation. I would say possibly with the formation it's slightly restrictive because you do have to take a third option of Guardian Defenders, and then it's like, what do I do with that cost? So this build here, I mean, you're talking 470 points plus the Warwalker. I think you have to take a Warwalker. I'm struggling to remember if they do. And I know you take a HQ choice, and also you have to take the other squad of Guardians. And it's like, what do you do with all that? And I'll be honest with you, you have to take, basically, in this build, you'd have to take maybe 3 like this, with 3 wave serpents. Then you're struggling to justify that many targets. there probably aren't that many armies that have that much infantry that he's dealing with. So I think 2 is a good number, 3 is probably a bit too much, too many points in one place, and I think you end up with a 90 points Guardian tax if you take the formation, which is probably why I wouldn't. I would also like them to be objective secured. I'd probably like them to be CAD with Wave Serpents being objective secured as well. Don't think you need the Viper necessarily, although actually in the build that I did win a tournament with, I did have 2 Vipers running interference in front of them. For that purpose, I actually got the Vipers outside of the formation. I just got the Vipers, and people say Vipers are rubbish, and they can be, but they're also quite deceptively good because they synergize well with what else you're doing. So I think overall it's not ultra competitive, but you're not going to lose any friends by going down this line. So overall, this build, I give it 3.5 out of 5, or a B-. Okay, so it's a B- build. With work, if you take the battle to the opponent, if you dictate terms, Guardians can only be made to get out when they're guaranteed to make a meal of whatever they're engaging. And one other thing I would say about Guardians in general, that at the end of the game, very rarely have I had a Guardian squad wiped out completely. It does happen, but most of the time they're down to 1 or 2 walking around, and they still can be objective securing, and they're still actually quite mobile with battle focus. Hi, the next build I'm going to go with is a 20-man blob build. Now, Eldar aren't known for their blobby units, but actually the nearest they get to it is Guardians. And they can take a 20-man squad of Guardians, and if you put this chap with them, the Avatar, you get some interesting buffs. One of them is they're fearless, so they will pretty much survive until he's dead. Secondly, even with the attritional rate of everything kills Guardians, you should survive 1 or 2. The other thing is that he gives them Rage and Furious Charge, which means that they actually become Strength 4 on the attack, and they get 3 attacks on the charge, which means that if you keep them on foot and you're careful, you should be able to get across the board with, especially if you've gone for a battle focus army, you should be able to get, sorry, a battle host army, you should be able to get, remember the Avatar's well will now run 6 inches if you go for the battle host formation. So with this unit, they will be guaranteed 12 inches a turn, and they'll be shooting 40 shots, which is not to be sniffed at. Also, they'll have 2 weapons platforms as well, which will be shuriken cannon. So you do some numbers there because some get deducted. But basically, you've got a lot of shots and going at the board. And bizarrely, on the turn that they charge, which could be as close as turn 2, the turn that they charge is quite a mess, because they actually will shoot twice each model. This guy will shoot on his own, will shoot twice. And then he will charge with 3 attacks, all strength 4, which means this little guy here, if he can get into assault on turn 2 through the middle of the board, he will actually do 5 attacks each. He'll shoot twice and he'll charge and engage 3. Now you have to be on your wits has to be about you to do this, but you can pull it off, and it's quite a surprising thing for the enemy to face. That many weapon skill 4, strength 4 attacks. It's actually incredible to, it's the sort of thing that even Space Wolves struggle to pull off. Just the weight of attacks. 100, you're talking here, without the Avatar, 100 attacks potential. Now, are they going to get there? Of course not. They're going to get whittled down, but that's the interesting part of it. And an opponent that sees what you're doing will have to deal with this. He will have to take this guy on. You can't ignore it. I mean, with the last build that I talked about, it's not impossible. I would say it's pushing it in 1850 points, but it's not impossible that you could take this build, and with the 2 Guardian Defender builds there, you've got 40 Guardian Defenders on the board now, an Avatar plus the Viper. Yeah, you're getting close to quite a lot of points, but you're still sub 1,000 points ish. Still in the sub with the Viper and the Warwalker and the other HQ, but you're getting close. But you see what I mean? You're still in that vicinity of, it's actually doable. And yeah, you've got to still take other stuff, and there's plenty of stuff you need to start taking. But there's quite a lot of potential to this, because this unit is the one they're going to be shooting. This unit here is the one they're going to be taking on, because they can't ignore it. It's very easy to deal with, but it has to be dealt with, and it will cross the board quite quickly. The other thing that I would say about this potential build is, if you ally with harlequins, you can get a shadowseer. Now, normal harlequins are famous for the Veil of Tears, but he's an independent character. You can attach him to the Guardian squad, right? And then he can cast Veil of Tears on the Guardian squad. Now, with a 12-inch move / run, and the fact that their guns have 12-inch range, 24 inches is as most you're going to get with Veil of Tears. So, effectively, their threat bubble is the same as Veil of Tears, kind of, and a lot of people are not going to shoot it. Now, most people don't, and I have to say this is a bit gamey, but when I've played this, I didn't use the Shadowseer, but when I've played this before, people have kind of assumed that the Avatar was part of the squad and not shot him. And actually that's a bit mean, because I really should have told them. One guy asked me in the middle of turn 2, is the Avatar part of the squad? And I said, no, you're not allowed to be. But people play a lot of armies, they never see Avatars. If they don't ask you, are you guilty if you don't tell them? I don't know. Probably a little bit, but potentially you can use that as well and say, if you like, look, I actually forgot to tell him, and he just assumed that he wasn't targetable because he's in the squad, which is not. It's not really in the squad. If that makes sense. The Avatar is targetable and should be, because he's only toughness 6. The one time I've used this, it made it up the board. It took 3 turns. It didn't have the battle focus stuff. It took a long time to slog up the board. It was turn 3 when they got the assault. Only 2 Guardians were left. But a lot of stuff shot at it. 2 Guardians survived, and those 2 Guardians charged, I think, about 15 Imperial Guard, and they caused horrendous damage. I think they killed like 9 of them, plus the Avatar, just 2 of them. Now you might say, oh, Imperial Guard, they're easy to clear out. But the truth is, this was a squad of 30 Imperial Guard, and they marched up the table, traded fire with them really respectably, and then they got the better of them in the middle of the board. They are really quite good, and I think with the Shadowseer option, they suddenly become competitive viable, because there isn't anything in the Harlequin Codex that gives you 20 men, and something like the Veil of Tears means that pretty much you're going to be completely fine on turn 1 unless they shoot the Avatar, and you're going to be unlucky to be in trouble in turn 2 even, and you could even get your charge off in turn 2, and then they're in trouble if they've got any number of units. Orcs on bikes even are in trouble with these guys. So, yeah, I would say got some potential. As a build, this build is not as good as the first one. Could be made to synergise with it if you were really dedicated and you had 40 models and you're determined to use them. Not really tournament strong, but able to offer some surprises to enemies. So I would say overall, this build with or without the Shadowseer, which is a bit of a complexity and a lot of money points wise, I would say this is a C-, maybe a D+. So I'd give this 1.5 out of 5. Okay, so final roundup on the Guardian Defender. Is it a useful unit in the current meta? It has its place. I think it's certainly equivalent to Dire Avengers. I think they've got more offensive capabilities than a Dire Avenger. I think if you want to defend for a bit, a Dire Avenger is your man. If you want to react more, Dire Avenger is your man. If you want to be proactive and get more power for your points, I think Guardians have got that corner down. They just do more damage than Dire Avengers for the points. They absorb it. They are a glass cannon that's not much of a cannon, but still, if dealt right with, if you're dictating the terms, if you're dictating the pace of the game, if your position, if your ball control's good, they can punish massively. Points for points, there's not as far as to say even Sci-Fi Warriors. Points for points, these are nasty things to have to come up against, especially if you've got Mekdar bringing them into combat. So I would say overall, there is a place for them. It's dependent a little bit on your skill as a general and maybe the lack of skill in your opponent. A good opponent will not make the mistake of allowing you to outposition him. But I would say, on balance, there's a place for them. They're not scat bikes. They're never going to be as good as scat bikes. But you might have 40 of these models in the cupboard. You might want to use them. So one of the pros is that they do have a role. Another one of the pros is that they are not going to lose you friends. If you turn up with 18 scat bikes in 6 squads of 3, people are going to think that the list beat them. And they'll be right. But with Eldar Guardians, you can go and you can have fun. Even if you're at a tournament with 3 other Eldar players, 4 other Eldar players, they're all going to be taking, the Wraith Knight from Forge World. They're all going to be taking the Scat Bikes, the Hornets. It's like the standard sort of, yawn. And to be honest, you'll see that list at any tournament these days, pretty much guaranteed. So what do you do about it? Well, you turn up with a list like this and see what happens. The other Eldar players aren't going to be used to it. The other players are going to be impressed that you've not turned up. I constantly get complimented, actually, that the Eldar that I take aren't overpowered. And it's one of the reasons why I take things like Vipers and I take things like Guardians, because it allows me to win a game, feel good about myself again, not just feel that I've got an overpowered list that's trolled everybody through. So I do think if you're that kind of player and you really like a hard challenge, Guardian Defenders are just at the place where they're kind of touching useful, but not where anybody would say he's just taken a hammy list. So I think they've got a really good role. I think they do an Eldar list that looks like that, feels like nothing, like doesn't feel like an ultra competitive Eldar list anymore. Could be almost any codex really, you know, for the type of quality of troops, because you're not seeing the same old stuff. The Eldar Codex is a rich codex, and also it's going to be cost effective financially if you've been playing the game a long time and you've got 50, 60 of these models and you want to make use of them. So I do think that they're there. I think the cons are clearly there for everybody to see. They die. I mean, even a squad of Marines, a tactical squad will kill 7 or 8 of these, no problem at all. Even orcs shooting will kill them all. You know, it's not uncommon to see 7 go down like that in one squad. I mean, they are really, really pitiful. And people kind of don't shoot them because of it. They'll shoot it once when there's 10, but when it's down to 3, they won't shoot it again. And I can say that with some confidence, having used them quite a lot of times. Eldars are an aggressive army. You've got to take down the most important threat. And to be honest, if you're playing Eldar, these guys aren't going to be the most important threat. The wave serpent that they're with might be the most important threat. The fact that you've got, I don't know, D canon stuff going on, or Crimson Hunter formation flying overhead, that's going to be their priority. And so they're going to think, do I need to shoot those 3 Guardians? No, their objectives secured. They'll wander around. They're very mobile. They're very mobile. For a little guy walking around, they'll get shift around the board. In 2 turns, they can be almost anywhere on the board, really. And especially if they're starting in the middle, decimated, which is usually where you would put them. I usually put them on a flank somewhere. So anyway, I do think that they're a good squad. I think overall they get a solid C in the Codex. Can be made to work. And yeah, I hope this review helps. Please subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And just, yeah, I think if you give us a like, give us a subscribe, and join the forum community on Eldar Army. And yeah, more reviews will be coming. Thanks very much.